focus on hitting your goals in every area of your business. Remember, the universe rewards the bold. A leader has to take the risks.
How you doing, dude?
I am doing terrific. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing unbelievable. So where are you from, man?
I'm originally from Mexico City, but I'm in Austin today. I have a place here in Austin. So
okay.
I'm in Austin. I've been here since November. I spend a lot of time here right now, working on my projects. And yeah, I travel a lot. I used to have a place in Houston, and about 5 months ago, I decided that I came to Austin for a weekend, and I fell in love with the city.
Really?
It's just a fun city, full of energy, a lot of excitement, a lot of young brain power. And I need to be, I'm not very smart, so I need to be around stuff like that.
I would kind of doubt that. I think you're probably pretty smart dude and all the great things that you've done. And I've been checking you out, man. And we said, hey, we're going to get Mr. Peter Estévez on Wealth on the Beach podcast, man. We're going to have some fun. We're going to talk health, wealth, business, all that great stuff.
I love it.
And so I'm really excited. You know, Peter, just for all the listeners, Peter was born Mexico City, Mexico, and migrated to the United States at the age of 10 years old, man. So you've been here a long time now. But I'm sure you have a lot of roots still, and we'll talk about those roots. But he is an entrepreneur and partner in several companies in the energy, gas, and oil sector in Mexico, and gives a lot of his money away. Advocate for recovery and mental health, a writer. He's got a book coming up. Hopefully, we'll talk about the book, Lies to Riches, and he is a host of a really great podcast. It's the Peter O Estvez Show. So we're going to get into all that great stuff today. And so again, thank you so much for coming on. Hey, Peter, so how'd you get in the oil and gas business? How did all that happen, man? Blue Sky Biofuels, right?
Yeah, bioenergy, Blue Sky Bioenergy. Yeah, that's an interesting story because my professional career was developed in the real estate business, and I exited my company in 1999. And then after 1999, I moved from San Antonio, Texas, to south of Houston, to north of Houston, rather, an area called the Woodlands. And I was semi-retired, and I did at a very young age, but I did a couple of more startups and sold a couple of them. And then some of them didn't go so well. And then in 2008, I found myself what I often refer to as broken. Okay. My mother passed away. We were facing one of the worst economic crises that the U.S. and the world had ever faced. My wife asked me for a divorce. My father passed away 6 months after, and I was faced raising a 6-year-old son as a single father. And there was a couple of years that I really didn't know what I was going to do. It was the first time in my life that I had faced one of those circumstances where I had shed many losses, and very monumental losses. Your parents, a marriage of 14 years, a business failure, and then seeing your legacy crumble in front of your 6-year-old son. And it's a very, very difficult time. But soon after that, a few years after that, the energy, oil and gas sector was privatized in Mexico. The government privatized it, and there was an opportunity for me and my partners at the time to start a company called Egomex, Energy, Gas, and Oil, Mexico. And Egomex was basically a full service lobbying arm that provided the services, the lobbying services, and was basically the bridge between the Mexican government, the American companies, or the Canadian companies that were coming into a brand new market. And that was the beginning of my footstep into the oil and gas business.
Sweet, man. That's an exciting story. And so I want to know, I want to kind of go a little bit into your past as far as like your childhood and what was it like growing up, at least those first 10 years, what was it like growing up in Mexico? A lot of people ask me, Daniel, where are you from? And, they'll ask me because my last name's Alonzo.
Right.
And my just so everybody knows, my great grandparents were born in Chihuahua, Mexico, and then of course my grandparents came here, and my parents were born here. But I was raised by my white mom, so I never got the Spanish lessons like I probably should have. So that was kind of a bummer. But looking back on your childhood, what was it like back in Mexico when you were a small child?
Well, first and foremost, Daniel, I don't want to leave the opportunity to thank you for having me on your incredible show. It's an honor and a privilege to be here today and to be able to share my story, our stories with the community. So thank you so much for that. But as a very young boy, I don't have a lot of memories of Mexico, but those memories that I do have were great, fond memories. My father was born in Houston, Texas. However, he was an orphan at the age of 13 years old, and his relative, he was an orphan from both parents, mother and father. They both passed away very young. In fact, his father was 33 years old when he passed away, and his extended family took him back to Mexico. So my father met my mother, they got married, and they had 13 children. That's a lot of children. That's a lot of children. Unfortunately, both of my parents were uneducated people. Mother had a 6th grade education, father had a 3rd grade education. And I think father soon found out that it was very difficult to make a living and to raise 13 children in Mexico. So he did what many Mexicans, first generation Latin Americans and Hispanics do. They went and pursued the American dream. So father worked in America and he sent the money back home. And we lived a fairly modest middle-class life. We live well. The dollar back then stretched a long ways, and 20 to 1, 18 to 1, 13 to 1, whatever it was at the time, it was a lot more than my father working in Mexico. So, as a young boy, I went to Catholic school. We lived in a fairly modest home, but life was good. I remember fond memories. Now, the memories that really, really, really are marked on me is the memory as a young boy coming to America. I'm one of 13 children. So we came to America when I was 10 years old. We lived in a 2-bedroom, 1 bath, less than 900 square feet frame home. There was only 1 bathroom. Mother and dad had their room. My sisters had a room with bunk beds, and the boys slept in the living room with in sleeping bags. I often refer to that we were so poor I could not afford a drink. So that part of my childhood penetrates more in me than that part of my than my childhood in Mexico. I mean, that's just the reality. But my father and mother were hardworking people. Father was a great provider. I think Gary B talks a lot about the side hustle. He talks a lot about the entrepreneurship. A lot of Latinos, a lot of us are entrepreneurs by default, by necessity. The fact that we have to develop survival skills. We have to be resourceful to be able to make ends meet. And I saw my father do that at a very young age. Mother, on the other hand, was an incredible, great homekeeper. She kept that house immaculate. She was an incredible mother in many ways. And she had an uncanny faith in God. I remember very early on, I used to see her night after night, rocking on her rocking chair, reading and praying, hours on end. And very often as a young boy, I was very cynical, and I used to say, why the fuck does she pray so much if our situation never changes? What I didn't realize is that her prayers were answered, because look at me now and look at the life that I had the privilege of living, that many of my siblings live as well. My brothers and sisters, all of us have a fairly decent, successful outcome in life, and we're productive members of society. So my mother's prayers were answered in many ways.
Oh gosh, that's a wonderful story. And so your mom, obviously your mom and dad affected you a lot. I mean, just in their raising you. Now, when you came, was there any struggles that you can remember when you came here as a child? Because that was a lot of years ago. And things were different back then for
absolutely, Daniel.
And I'm just going to jump in and just say the reason why I know this, because I remember even my own father. Now, he was even born here, but because, we were in kind of a not so good neighborhood, and, or their family was a not so good neighborhood. And he wanted to speak English so bad. Like his Spanish was not even as good as the years went on, because he was so focused on speaking English, because people made fun of them, for speaking Spanish. And so did you ever experience any of that growing up?
Absolutely. We migrated to the United States at a very difficult time where discrimination was at an all-time high. And it was a lot of discrimination against the Hispanic and Latin community. There was a lot of discrimination. What we see, not minimizing what the African American community has gone through, but we experience a lot of similarities of discrimination. I remember we lived in a corner house, the corner of Hillcrest and Bangor, and there was many mornings that we woke up to the word graffiti on our side wall of the house, wetbacks go home. Okay, mojados go home. For me, it was very difficult. I grew up in a very small, at the time, was San Antonio, Texas. At the time, was less than 200,000 people. Today is 4 million plus in population. But at the time, it was a heavy penetrated American to the roots town, 7 or 8 military bases. It's about as American pie as you could get, right? So even though there was a lot of second, third, and fourth generation Latin people, Mexican people, Hispanic people in there were Americans. They felt Americans. They had an incredible pride for America. They didn't speak Spanish. They didn't want to speak Spanish, as you said it, because they had been raised in classrooms where they were punished if they actually spoke Spanish. Okay, so I remember one couple of stories that if you give me an opportunity to share them, but one of them as a young boy, my first year in the 4th grade in Mrs. Passmore class, I see all the boys raising their hands, all the boys and girls raising their hands because the teacher had said something. So I raised my hand. Okay, I was a chameleon. I was trying to adjust. I was doing what I saw everybody else doing. So Mrs. Passmore, in her own kind, trying to be inclusive, calls on me, and she says, Pedro, Peter. Okay, and my automatic response was "que," meaning what? Because I didn't know what she was telling me. All I know was that I raised my hand and she called my name. Now I didn't know what to do from there. And from there on, I became "que" in school for a very, very long time. And those things as a young kid, they mark you, they label you, So I developed a different kind of a way of viewing adversity, right? All those challenges drove me to be better, to do better, to become better, to seek success, okay? And I really thought that a lot of my issues had been permeated out of the fact that I came from a poor family of 13, which was not common, to live in a 2-bedroom, 1-bath home in America, where you even in the average American home, there's 2.5 children, a dog and a cat, right? Now there's 13 children. We had a football team, okay, plus a bench warmer, on the sideline. So we were not a usual family, and all of that permeated a lot of shame, a lot of guilt, a lot of fear, a lot of insecurity, a lot of imposter syndrome. Okay, that also drove me. They drove me along with some of the attributes that my father and my mother had instilled in me, like the resourcefulness, the hardworking ethic that my father had, my mother's uncanny faith, her prayers, her meditation, her dedication to her family. They drove me to success. They drove me to pursue what I thought was going to fix all of my problems, was to achieve financial success. I did achieve financial success at a very young age, but along with all of that, I had a lot of unaddressed issues. I had emotional issues, spiritual issues, mental issues, physical issues that I had not addressed. So I still had a big empty hole in the center of my soul that I could not fill with sex, women, alcohol, cars, toys, houses. Nothing could ever fill. I often say, Daniel, that you cannot achieve financial success when you're fighting an internal battle. And I had accumulated a lot of financial wealth, but I was fighting an internal battle. It was not until I went back, I addressed that 10-year-old little boy that felt broken, okay, that felt that he couldn't achieve his dreams, okay. I had to let him go. He was no longer invited to the boardroom, the meeting room, the conferences, the marriages, the partnerships, or anywhere else. I had to let him go. When I let him go, I was able to achieve a full and abundant life, which is what I live today.
Well said. Look, and this is normal for a lot of people that maybe weren't raised in the perfect family or the perfect situation. I mean, people that come from broken homes, maybe just people that maybe didn't have as much education, or they didn't come. So what I love about what you're talking about is that you turn that though into fuel. And I've been telling people this for a long, long time, is that, man, you could be a victim or you can be a victor. And a lot of people, they ruin their lives being the victim of their circumstances.
Absolutely.
And they never quite ever reach any sort of level of success because they're such a victim. Now, even though, because I relate a lot to what you're talking about, Peter, because I felt like an uneducated little Mexican kid. I was never that smart. I probably, well, I do have a lower IQ than most. And so that really, as a young man going into business, I would sit down with a tall, educated white guy, and I would be completely intimidated by this person. And it stunted my growth in those early years, I believe. And once I figured out that I was just as smart as anybody else, because I put in the time, the effort, the study time, the focus, the discipline, the work ethic. And once I started to believe in myself, everything turned around. And so it's very inspiring that you say that. And then what you just said, to have that full life, is when you really start shedding those limiting beliefs and start shedding that younger, self, is when you really started to get into the real dream that you're living today. And that's, I think it really comes down to having it all. And that's that mental, spiritual, financial, when you put it all together, that's what you're achieving today. So is any of that make sense to you?
Oh, completely, because I live in that cycle. Even though I had achieved incredible financial success, I still lived in a state of survival. I still live in that, fight and flight mode. I still live in high alert. I still live like if I was a broken 10-year-old little boy waiting for something bad to happen. I still carry all that negative energy and all that negative trauma, because what happens to many immigrant children, okay, and to many children of adverse circumstances, is that we carry the trauma of our parents, we carry the trauma of our ancestors, we carry our trauma of people, of our social conditioning, and until we get rid of that, we are never going to be able to function to our full potential. We have to address that. Every single individual operates from what I call the 5 pillars: the physical, the mental, the emotional, the spiritual, and financial. Okay. And when you operate from those 5 pillars, when they're all balanced and in synchronicity, when they're operating together, you're operating from a state of flow. You become present and available here and in the now, and you're able to see your life with clarity and possibilities. You have completely exit that state of survival. You're no longer time traveling between the past and the future. You're operating from a single state of consciousness. When you're able to do that, your life is magical. Your life is magical. There's nothing that you can't do. There's nothing that you cannot achieve, because everything's possible. You live a full and abundant life.
That's so cool, man. Why did you start a podcast? What motivated you to do that? Because I mean, you didn't have to do it. I mean, you're financially free. It's not like you're doing it because it's making you rich or anything like that. I mean, why'd you do it?
Well, I started to have a podcast. First of all, I've been sober from alcoholism for 20, almost 23 years. Okay. And I really realized that the mental health, addiction, were issues that permeated in my family. Okay. There are issues that really help many of my family members back from becoming the best version of themselves. So I got sober, and then I got sober to a program of Alcoholics Anonymous, which obviously, hence the words anonymous, right? A lot of those stories stay in the rooms. They're not shared. They die in those rooms. And I really thought, well, that's really kind of stupid. we have an issue that permeates in many communities, in many families across the world. Okay, across the world, across any ethnicity, across any race, any color, any creed, right? So why not share those stories? So I started the podcast as a platform to bring awareness to addiction and recovery and mental health, right? And my podcast really took off. We started having some incredible thought leaders from across the world. And right in the midst of that, we shifted the mindset of not just talking about addiction and recovery, but actually talking about issues that permeate in everybody's community, in everybody's home at every single level. Right in the midst of COVID, people don't want to talk about addiction and recovery. They want to talk about how to pivot, how to transform, how to change, how to survive, bottom line is, Daniel, I'm more than addiction. I'm more than recovery. I'm more than mental health. I am a father. I'm a businessman. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a philanthropist. I'm an author. I'm a member of my community. I want to be able to give to people as much as I have received. So that's the reason I started the podcast. And awesome. as a result of that, we have had some incredible guests that share stories, but they're solution-based stories.
Right. Right. And that's, I think most of us that start a podcast, there's something inside of us that we want to bring out these great stories. And I love what I do and I get to do because I love meeting people like you, man. I love meeting new people that have great stories of, because I think for some reason there's this thought in the world that, successful people, they just wake up and they're just successful. And really, I think it's just the movies or what, you watch a movie and in 2 hours, the guy goes from, down and out to successful in 2 hours. And we think that that's the way, and that's not the way that real life works. And to hear you talk about your past and what you've went through and the struggles and the challenges, and then to see that after all said and done, you've kind of came to a point where you're starting to live the life that God was meant for you to live. Absolutely. That's exciting. That's exciting. That is the whole, that's the journey of life. And that's fun to know. And you said follow, I heard you say on your Instagram, follow your dreams, but stay awake. What does that mean to you? What does that mean?
Well, it's a very simple code. It's as simple as all of us are dreamers, right? All of us are dreamers, but in order for us to be able to execute on the dream, we have to be awake. We have to be awake. We have to be present and available. We have to be able to show what the possibilities are and then be able to share our successes and our failures. Life is not just about success. You just said it. I was a success overnight. It just took me 50 years to get here. Okay. So yeah, the success happens overnight. It is one pivotal moment that people notice you. You have arrived in the sense of the word. But the reality is that it takes you 50 years or 60 years or 40 years or whatever number of years to be able to arrive to that particular point in life. People don't see all the grinding that goes in the background. We don't, we filter and edit our stories, but our lives, we can't filter. It doesn't matter how much we try to filter them. Life is life, and it's going to hit you in the face, and it's going to smack you. It's going to throw you around, but it is up to you to be able to get up and face your challenges and adversities with great strength and hope. And when you do that, the journey is much more easier. But that's why it's so important, Daniel, that we operate from a state of abundance, that we operate from a state of being a state of flow, from not operating, because the average individual, and I don't mean that in a demeaning way, the average individual that does not take care of themselves, okay, is constantly operating from a state of survival, because that's the way we are made to be. I was having a conversation where I created a movement called Excelente, which is a movement to identify, okay, inspire, educate, transform, and empower 100 million people by December 31st, 2028. And we do that by creating different platforms where we share our stories. But we share our stories not because our stories are unique. We share our stories in service. Our stories, your story, my stories, able to allow someone else to hear their stories in our stories. And it gives them permission to talk about it. Okay, when you start talking about it and you create a domino effect, you begin to find solutions to the problems that have permeated in your communities, in your household. You know, if you don't talk about the elephant in the room is controlling that fucking room. Okay, and you want to be the one controlling the room. When you take the power from the elephant, you are in power. When you are in power, you have possibilities, you have clarity, and you are able to make decisions for yourself and for your family and for your community.
And so how did you get to that? Because you have such an incredible mindset about life and about persistence and pushing forward. You know, how do you like if you were to have a conversation with somebody that's out there and they said, you know, I'm a small entrepreneur, I'm a small business owner, and I'm trying to have success. I want to get to that next level. I'm trying to, you know, do all these things and raise a family and work, you know, little side hustles and trying to do the best job that I can. And just things are not happening for me fast enough. What's the conversation that you have with somebody like that when it comes to getting to that next level?
Daniel, I do a lot of mentoring. Okay, I do a lot of business high-level mentoring, and I have those conversations very often. The reality is that many of us live in a state of survival. That's the first thing we need to remember. Okay, and in order for us to be able to see our life with clarity and possibilities, we need to exit that state. Okay, we need to become present and available here and in the now. We need to stop time traveling between the conscious and subconscious. We need to operate from a single state of consciousness. How do we do that? That's the $1 million question, right? How do we do that? Because what happens is we're all preoccupied with paying the rent, paying the mortgage, paying for the car, sending our kids to school, keeping food in the refrigerator. I saw my parents do that every single day for many, many years. And their troubles became my troubles. Okay, their issues became my trauma. Okay, their problems became my trauma. They're all I heard about the lack of money, the mindset, scarcity mindset, all of that became my own detrimental isms that I call them. Okay, they became my isms. They were the things that even when I achieved incredible financial success, I still felt poor. I still felt broken. I still felt like I wasn't enough. I still have fear and insecurity. I felt like an imposter, like I didn't belong to my wealth. I felt like somebody was soon going to discover how dumb I was or how smart I wasn't. Okay, because I had carried all that trauma with me. So the first thing we need to do is to shed that trauma. And really, I truly believe the 5 pillars to an abundant life is a true proven system that I have applied to many of the people that I coach and teach. Okay, and is basically a series of actions. Okay, that become disciplines. Okay, that becomes rituals and ultimately become a lifestyle. Okay, you cannot accomplish anything that becomes a task. You cannot accomplish anything that you have to be another to-do list in your book. Okay, in your list of 150 something plus that you have, you can't. It has to become a lifestyle. It has to become something that you do innately. What does my average morning look like? I can tell you what my average morning looks like every day because it's my lifestyle. I get up, I go for a run. Okay, I pray during my run. I go work out. After I work out, I jump in the sauna. I meditate in the sauna for 20 minutes. Okay, I get back home. Before I do anything else, answer phone calls, do anything else. Okay, I go and I journal, I write, and I read. Okay, so what am I doing during that period of time? Okay, is I am feeding my mind, my soul, my body, my spirit. So I'm addressing the 5 pillars of my life each and every single day. Okay. So, and somebody's going to tell you, well, I don't have enough time. Well, let me tell you something. Successful people don't have any more time than you do. they manage themselves better. You can't manage time. I
Well,
can't
somebody might say, like, hey, look, Peter, seriously, man, I got to get up in the morning. I got to take the kids to school. I got to, get on this and this, I got all these things I got to do. There's no way. I don't have time to do that. I don't have time to do that. So what's the answer? I mean, how do they overcome the fact that, they'd have to get up at, to do all the stuff that you're talking about, they'd have to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning every day. I mean, is that the answer?
No, that's not the answer.
Okay.
That really is not the answer, Daniel.
Okay.
Each circumstances, each individual is completely different, right? Because every individual has their own obligations, their own financial commitments, their own, their children that they have to tend to get to school to pick up, their jobs, whatever it is. Typically when I began my process work with someone, the first thing we do, if we write their story, we write their story. I have them journal their story. Okay. What is a story that they see that they are telling themselves? Okay. Is a story that they're telling themselves, is that a victim or a victor? Okay. Is a story that they're telling themselves is that the world has been bad to them? Is a story that they're telling themselves that everything is impossible? So we have to change that mindset. It doesn't matter who you are. It does not matter who you are. There's always possibilities. The reality is that when you and I start having a conversation like this, and you say, what happens to this individual? What happens to this other individual? Very early on, I'm not ignoring your question. I'm giving you a very broad answer because there's not a straight answer to your question, okay? Very early on, when I started having people like John Ashraf on my podcast, like Dan Fleshman on my podcast, people like Dean Graziosi, and I would ask them the same questions. Well, what about this person? What about the circumstances? And everybody said, "So mindset, it's all mindset, and you can do it, and you got to do this, and you got to do that." The reality is that there are certain communities that are at disadvantage. Okay, they are at a disadvantage. It is going to be very impossible for somebody that has not had educational pedigree, okay, to come out and read a course and become successful overnight. What do I mean by that? Okay, you see someone like Gary Vee talking about, well, he doesn't do it as often, but he used to talk about, they would denounce the need to go to college, the need to get a formal education. I completely disagree when it comes to certain communities, okay? There's a lot of communities that can denounce today to go or not go to college. That is a complete choice. It's not going to affect their level of success. But you know what communities are those? The communities that have had an educational pedigree, parents that are educated, parents that have created a foundation to be able to raise your IQ, to be able to raise your emotional intelligence, to be able to give you an edge in life above everybody else's. Okay, that is not going to happen in a lot of Latino communities. That is not going to happen in a lot of African American communities. It's just not going to happen because we don't come from that pedigree. Okay, I said it early on in my conversation. My father had a 3rd grade education. My mother had a 6th grade education. I was fucking doomed to be dumb. And that's not being disrespectful to my father or my mother. That's just a reality. Had I not chosen to educate myself, okay, to be willing to break the cycle of dysfunction and ignorance and illiteracy, so my son will not continue with that chain, that anchor of dysfunction, that anchor of misery, that anchor of brokenness, that anchor of fear and insecurity and imposter syndrome. I would have perpetuated the cycle that multi-generations began for all of us. So to answer your question in a more direct way, one of us is going to break the cycle, okay? It is going to take many of us to break the generational cycle, but we also do have a generational opportunity today when education, information has been digitized, okay, demonetized and democratized, meaning that every single one of us has an opportunity to become educated at some level, at whatever level that is. What happens is there's still a tug of war between our households with what works and what doesn't work, okay? Because if I'm going to talk to Mr. and Mrs. Gonzalez or Mr. and Mrs. Jones, and Mr. and Mrs. Jones and Mr. and Mrs. Gonzalez have been working a blue collar job, 8 to 5, working their ass off for the past 40 years, it's going to be very difficult for them to understand that certain things need to change in society for their children to have a better life. And their grandchildren and their grandchildren, children have a better life. But somebody has to break the cycle. It's not a yes and no answer. It's not an easy solution. It's a generational opportunity that we have today with the amounts of information available to all of us.
And I totally agree with that. And I think the other angle of it is that, just like you said, somebody has to break the cycle. Somebody has to change. Somebody has to do something different. And if it's an excuse of saying, well, you know, I don't have the time, I have this and this and this, I guarantee you though, those people spend time on Netflix.
Absolutely.
They spend time watching movies. They spend time on social media, like not in the right way. They spend time in gossip. They spend time in drama. They spend time with the wrong people. They go out on Friday night. You know, look, I mean, there was a lot of excuses that I could have made at 21 when I started in business. I could have said, hey, I'm young. I'm supposed to have a good time. I'm supposed to go out and party. I'm supposed to go be with all my friends. I'm supposed to do all these things. And instead, there was something inside of me that said, wait a minute. I want to be successful. Like, I have a dream of being successful, and there are things that I'm going to have to sacrifice to get that dream. I mean, there's nobody that gets a dream. There's nobody that has ultimate success that hasn't sacrificed something. I believe that in everything inside of me. It's just a choice, right?
Absolutely. It is a choice. I gave a full-blown description of some of the taboos and some of the challenges that we have to face as a generation, right, in certain communities. But the reality is that when somebody gets with me and they start telling me that they don't have time because of this or because of that, and I get them to write the story, and then I get them to do a self-analysis of what they do with their time. What is their highest values? What is the highest hidden values in their time? If Instagram, social media, YouTube, if all of this stuff that is completely unnecessary, okay, or unedited, or uncensored, or has no boundaries, okay, if for example, there's nothing wrong with social media. If you are, I look at social media as an extension of who I am, okay, but I use it to be able to champion my causes, to be able to champion my efforts, not to be scrolling down social media to see who's wearing what or comparing myself to anybody. If I would start comparing myself to people, I would become miserable, okay? So number one, I only follow people that add value to my life. That's how I censor my social media, whether it's Facebook or Instagram or TikTok, whatever, they're bringing value to my life. I don't care to see funny, stupid videos. That's not what I'm interested in. Okay, I'm interested in stuff that is relevant and important, and it's going to help me make an impact on myself, so I can make an impact on my family, so I can make an impact on my community, so I can make an impact in the world. That's how I curate the content that I take in, whether it's music, whether it's books, whether it's who I follow on social media, whether it's a YouTube or a podcast, whatever it is. The fact is that we have a plethora of information available to us on a daily basis that can help us curate the life that we truly want if we choose to pick the right content. So that's what I start. Write your story. We do an inventory of your time, and then we assess how you're spending your time by curating and integrating things that's going to add value to your life. Okay. I still watch social media. I still participate in social media. I still watch television. It's just, what am I watching? I still read books. I still go to YouTube, but I go to YouTube to follow people that bring interest and value to me. Okay. What we realize is that I have replaced things into my life that add that high, that rush, okay, that dopamine, okay, that serotonin that I was looking for in sex, in alcohol, in women, in new cars, and new toys. Now I allow my body, okay, my biology to produce that innately. So I'm on a high and a rush every single day, every moment of the day. And all of us have access to that.
And it's like literally you're programming your mind to get excited and have those feelings that are produced. We produce it, our own body produces these feelings just like you would have if you were, high or on drugs or something. I mean, we can create that, but in a positive way. I mean, think about it. I used to write a sale with a client, and then I would turn on my radio in the car, and I would feel high. I would feel excited. I would get the chills. I would, be optimistic. I would want to do it again and again and again, just like a drug addict wants that drug again and again and again. I replaced all that. That's why I don't do drugs. I replaced all that and I said, man, I'm just going to replace it with getting new recruits and building my business and making more money and helping more people and creating more successful people. And so, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. And I just, look, you said From Lies to Riches. That's your book, right?
From Lies to Riches.
From Lies to Riches. Tell us how did you come up with that title, and tell us a little bit about the book and how we can get it, and a little bit more about
it's very, very simple. We are continuously telling ourselves lies about ourselves, and I did that for a long time. I thought I was broken. Okay, I was filled with fear, insecurities, imposter syndrome. The reality is that I was outgrown where I was at that particular time in my life. And I was entering new and challenging places that I did not know how to navigate. I was not an imposter where I was going. I was an imposter where I was at. I no longer fit in. I had outgrown that space, and now new possibilities were walking in me, and I was being challenged by those possibilities, and I confused that with fear and insecurity. Okay, but when you prepare yourself, when you study, when you learn, Daniel, I remember thinking, like you said earlier, I don't have the highest IQ. I have one of the lowest IQ. I remember thinking I was done. I remember that I had achieved a tremendous amounts of success by accident. I was hoping nobody ever questioned me long enough to realize how dumb I was, okay, or how smart I was not, okay? I used to feel that way. The reality is that I felt that way because there was a lot of areas in my life where I was ignorant, because I didn't know what I did not know, okay? And the minute that I started reading, learning, growing, evolving, listening to podcasts, there's a series of things that we can do each and every day to enhance our ability to learn and to grow and evolve and change. Most of us don't do it. We get hypnotized by the Kardashians, or we get hypnotized by even Grant Cardone or Gary Vee, whatever he's doing. But what are you doing to be able to begin to achieve something in your personal life that will help you even escape a little bit, change, grow a little bit, become a little bit better? Treat it like compound interest. If I make a deposit into myself each and every way into my well-being, I'm going to grow and expand. It is impossible for us not to grow and expand if we dedicate ourselves and our lives to growing and expanding. It just by default is going to happen. So, when I started reading books, when I started listening to good podcasts, when I started attending personal development seminars, when I started listening to TED Talks on a daily basis, when I started creating my life that it would begin grow and enrichment and healthy instead of gossip and criticizing people and watching stupid joking shows that didn't add any value to my life started to change. And I felt my own self-confidence rising, okay? And it was completely different when I would enter a room and I would feel my own confidence. And somebody talked about a topic, whether it was civil silence, whether it was politics, whether it was the economy, I knew I could contribute in a way that I was not overshadowing, that I was not bragging, because I knew a little bit about everything. At that particular time, I no longer felt like an imposter. I no longer felt insecure. But for a long time, I told myself those lies because it was a lot easier. It's a lot easier to stay in your comfort zone, not because it's comfortable, but because it's known. Okay. And because everybody, when you try to exit, when you try to change, when you try to grow, when you try to evolve, there's always going to be somebody within your current community that's going to stop you and say, nah, you don't want to take those chances. Nah, you don't want to do that. Who are you trying to pretend? Who are you trying to kid? I remember you when you were broke. I remember this. Those are the people that you need to create out of your life. We become the total sum of the 5 people that we associate ourselves with. So make sure that you are associating yourself with people that bring value into your life, that are smarter than you, that are in better physical condition than you, that dress better than you, that speak better than you, that are more educated than you, so you can learn from them. That's how you choose your 5. That's how you become number 6.
And one of the best things that y'all could do that are listening or watching this on YouTube right now, literally, I mean, go subscribe to the Peter O Estévez Show on iTunes or Spotify or wherever, because he's everywhere. But because he has to become one of those 5 friends. See, this is why I love doing what I do and what I get to do, because I get to surround myself with all these really great people with a higher level of understanding about life. I don't care how much money I make. The truth is I want to get better, because I believe that progress equals happiness. So I'm like, I just want to be happy. I want to have a happy life. I want to have a fulfilled life. And because I've surrounded myself around people like Peter. And by the way, when I first went into business, I did the same thing. I sought out the best people in the field. And I said, and I humbled myself as a young man. And this is, by the way, a challenge for some people that are 40 or 50 trying to become successful right now. It's a big challenge, is they cannot humble themselves. I humbled myself. I pretended that I had invested a lot of money into the companies that I was working with. And I said, I'm going to follow everything they tell me to do. I'm going to be coachable. I'm going to follow the game plan. I'm going to follow the system, because they want me to become successful. And I don't care where you're at, you hook up with a mentor, that mentor wants you to become successful. That mentor wants you to succeed, because they want to use you as a success story for them anyway. So we all have reasons why we want you to do good. So stop being so cynical out there and thinking that everybody's trying to take advantage of you or everybody's trying to hurt you. Go find people like Peter and say, Peter, help me, teach me, coach me, mentor me, let me, I want to win so bad, I'll do what it takes. Have that humble feeling. And I think that you will attract great people in your life, because to me, some of the best people, most successful people that I've ever met are the most giving people, are the people that want to make a difference the most. It really is wild how that works. When by the way, most people think the complete opposite. They think that, oh, Peter's so busy that he'll never talk to me, or Peter's so, busy, he'll never answer my DM or something like that. Well, guess what? He wants to build a relationship with you. He wants to help you. And you might want to reach out and just at least say hello and say, I met you through Daniel Alonzo on Wealth on the Beach podcast. Right after they buy your book, Peter, okay? Because you need to go out and get Peter's book and read that sucker right away. And of course, just tell him hello and tell him that he added a lot of value today on Wealth on the Beach podcast. So, hey, Peter, if you can just kind of close it up with us right now and let us know how we get in touch with you, best ways to reach out, and how we can all get to know you a little bit better.
Absolutely. If you want to be part of our movement, part of what we're doing to impact lives across the world, this is not about me. This is not about Daniel. The new series for Excelente, which is Excelente, the movement that I created, is called Latin Talks. And Latin Talks is talks and conversations with local Latin leaders that will share their solutions and answers to how they face challenges and adversity. Right now, we're going on a 4-city tour that includes Austin, San Antonio, Houston, and Dallas. But we plan to bring this movement across the world, because we realize what you said very early on, Daniel, is how do we impact? How do we catch a lot more of those naysayers, the people that make the excuses, not because they're making excuses, but because that's their reality to them. today for them. We need to help them break through that reality and create a new perspective and a new reality through them. And the only way we can do it is with boots on the ground. So if you want to be part of that movement, join us. Go to my Facebook page. I'm everywhere on Facebook. I'm on Instagram as Peter O Estévez. Excellent event on Instagram. And of course, the Peter O Estévez Show. I'm everywhere. My website is Peter O Estévez. You can find the book there. And I look forward to being part of your community. Thank you so much, Daniel, for having me.
We appreciate you, Peter. And as always, make sure that you continue to dream bigger. Get after it. It's time to get after it. It's time to go, go, go. And most importantly, do it now. God bless you. We will see you at the top.